take the roll again. Take a few minutes here. We do have a holiday next Monday, just want to let you know. Martin Luther King Day, so no school Monday, but we'll be back Wednesday. I believe that following, when is our test? I don't want to say it's after the Super Bowl. Is that right? Anybody? I don't have my syllabus with me. 27? So it would be that following Monday. So we've got a little bit of stuff, we've got a little bit of work to do here in the next 3 meetings. But here's the lessons tab in Angel for the course. We're going to look at the study of economics. Should be able to finish that today fairly quickly, 45 minutes to an hour. And I might be able to start the series of demand and supply. If not, we'll start it on Wednesday. Those are a little bit longer, about 20-something slides, and take some time to explain. Now, those of you that have had me, 2 or 3 of you have, are going to think this is a repeat. It is. First couple of weeks, actually up to the first test, it's identical from the macro course that you had, except for one little slight series of slides on the production possibilities curve. Other than that, these 2 sets of slides are the same ones that you saw in the fall if you had me in the fall. But I need to go over these 2 things, for those that didn't have me, and those that have had me just as a review. All right, so I'm not going to pull it up from here. I always use my memory stick, so I'm going to go ahead and take it off of that. It's the same set, same file. You're probably, it just works easier off of this. Printing them, I think I kind of suggested a way to print 3 or 4 slides to a page, or 6 slides to a page, doesn't really matter. Pick out the number of slides that you can read. Let's see how big this is. Okay. This first set of slides is on a number of different things, little terms, especially some at the end. And I think I did a few of these, didn't I? Yeah. I think I went through about 4 or 5, maybe. Maybe it was the cost benefit. This one, maybe the one I left off. So we talked about the class size example of 20 students or 100 students. And yes, you would teach it with 20 students if the benefit, the improved grades, were outweighing the cost of teaching it, from hiring extra people. If you had to hire 1 per student, per 20 students, rather than pay 1 to teach 100. And then we talked about the willingness for people to pay for smaller classes, such as private universities. There's another example. I don't know if I did this one. Did I? No? The computer game example. This is a similar type of cost-benefit decision you make. You make these kind of decisions every day, but you probably don't think about them. You just kind of, in your mind, you calculate it. And sometimes it's not even a dollar figure that's associated with it. It's an emotional figure. Maybe your feelings. But this is a game, I could probably have to increase the dollar value here to kind of relate a little more currently. This is an older example, but you have a choice, a decision to make between buying a $25 computer game at a nearby campus store or the same game at a downtown store for only $15. The benefit, as you can see, is obviously you save $10 by going downtown for the game, the difference between the 25 and the 15. The cost, though, is what you're going to give up in order to do that. How much, everything you have to give up to go downtown to get it. If you're driving, you're going to pay for gas, your time, maybe even had to give up a little bit of work, maybe an hour of work to do it, which would be a loss of income. So if you think that the benefit exceeds the cost in your mind, you'll do it. You'll make that decision and go downtown to get it. People choose differently on this, though. As you can see here, it depends on how costly they think it is to make that trip downtown. Like I said, you do this probably every day. How about buying gas? Do you look at the benefit cost? No. I know one thing. I am not going to drive out to the interstate, nearer the interstate, to the racetrack out there to save a nickel a gallon of gas. I'm not going to do that. It's not worth it to me. There's too much of a cost for me to have to do that. The cost of time, the aggravation of traffic. So you really can't calculate that, but you can at least be frazzled by going down to the interstate or near there to save a nickel's worth of gas. So I don't think people would choose that. I mean, if you do, heck, if you want to save gas, go to Pinellas County and go across the bridge. You can save a little bit of money and come back. But it doesn't make any sense. The cost to me would exceed the benefit, and I wouldn't do it. I think also, I'm going to mention this, the difference between the dollar value here, the gap, 25 and 15 and $10 difference, is probably not big enough. You know, if you're looking at deciding, now if the computer game was $100 at the campus store and $15 downtown, now you're going, man, $85 savings there. I'm going to probably do that. This is not going to cost me $85 to go downtown. But $10, that's why I think I got to change these numbers a little bit. But the decision is going to be kind of 50-50 to people, depending on the cost making that trip. The third principle, that was the second one, cost benefit. Before that we had the scarcity principle. The third principle is the incentive principle. The incentive principle has to do with rewards. A person, this is the definition, a person or a firm or a society is more likely to take an action if its benefit rises and less likely to take an action if its cost rises. So incentives do matter. Rewards do matter. The example here is the price of heating oil. If it rises sharply, what are you going to do as a reward? Now, if you're up north in the cold weather and to heat your home, you got to use heating oil, and every month you'll get a bill for that. So, as a reward, if that heating oil goes up dramatically, you're going to do what to your thermostat? Probably knock it down a little bit. In other words, keep your house a little cooler, maybe around 60, 65, and put on a sweater, a sweatshirt, something to keep yourself warm in the house. Because you know if you get that bill at the end of the month and you've kept it higher to keep warm, it's going to be $400 or something. You're going to go, oh God. I mean, there's no, you have a disincentive. I mean, you want to get a reward for that. It's the opposite in Florida during the summer. You want to run your air conditioning. So if you have to pay for the electric, you say, okay, well, I'm not going to run my air at 72 degrees all summer long. And I'm not there. So it's only when I'm there I want to run it at a comfortable level. When I'm not there, maybe turn it up to 80, 82 and let it, let ceiling fans circulate the air. But because again, you're going to get that FPL bill at the end of the month. And you'd rather see it about $80 rather than $280. Because that air conditioning bill, or air conditioning is a big part of the electric bill. So you have an incentive to either lower your thermostat during the cold season or increase your thermostat during a warm season if you're in the south. So obviously rewards and incentives do matter. The next slide is about a term of rationality. The assumption, this is actually an assumption. There's another assumption here I'm going to point out a few slides later. But one of the assumptions that is common in economics is the rationality assumption. Meaning that I'm assuming that all of you are rational. I may be wrong. Some of you may be very irrational. But to think about economics, you gotta assume that people are rational people, that you have a well-defined set of goals about life, and you're going to make yourselves better off. You're going to pursue opportunities to do that. You're not going to make yourself worse off. You're not going to make a decision, choose something that says, oh gosh, I'm going to get in trouble if I do this. You're not going to purposely try to. So you're rational in thinking. You're going to respond to positive rewards, incentives. You're going to respond to negative rewards or incentives, much like you did when you were a child when you got punished, a negative consequence of something. The example here I gave was during the course of your academic career in college, you need to take certain courses, and this is just one of them, leading to the fulfillment of the degree at the end, the 4-year degree. The microeconomics is one course, English is another, math courses are other parts of your, but you have a goal in mind. A goal is to get a degree. You may not know what it is right now. How many know what you're going to get a degree in already? Really? Okay, you'll change. But yeah, I went to school. I went here for 1 year, and then I went to UF. And I was thinking of pre-med. Really, I had pretty good grades in high school. Came here, took chemistry. It was hard. Let me tell you. I remember the lady that taught. She was a seasoned veteran here. She's retired, but nice lady. As I taught here many years ago, she was still here. So I saw her on campus occasionally. But yeah, it was a difficult course. And so then I went to Florida thinking I would be pre-med. I didn't, I knew the commitment there, and I didn't want to do that. So you change. Then I said, okay, I'm going to be an accounting major. I figured out the commitment there was also, well, if you're going to be an accounting major, you got to understand, you got to take some time for homework and learn the accounting concepts. I did it back then it was pencil and paper. All pencil and paper, 4-column paper. There was none of this. No computers, no software programs that made it, made it fairly easy. I shouldn't say fairly easy, but easier. You don't have to use pen and paper as much. I thought I learned accounting and I did learn accounting. I liked accounting. And just majoring in it was just not for me. So I changed to economics eventually, but you might change too. You may decide that you're going to be an accounting major now. Then you take your 2 accounting courses here, and then you decide, no, I'm not going to do that. It might change you. I don't want to make it fearful of you. I don't want you to. Or you may take a introduction to nursing class. You want to be a nurse, and all of a sudden after that first class you take, you go, forget that. I'm not being a nurse. Things come along in life, and you have to make decisions. But you're taking courses along the way for the fulfillment of a degree eventually. This is another important concept of economics called the opportunity cost. We kind of alluded to it earlier, but the definition is that first bullet point, the value of the next best alternative that must be foregone in order to undertake the activity. What do you got to give up? What do you got to forego in order to do something? That's essentially the question you ask. So what did you have to give up to come to this class? I know you're going to say sleep. Maybe you had to go to work, or could have gone to work. That's a measurable one. Sleep, not so much. Yeah, important to get your sleep, but you could have said, well, I'm missing 2 hours of work taking a silly class on Mondays and Wednesdays. So that's 2 hours, 2 days a week, 4 hours of work a week. At $10 an hour, I'm missing out $40. So you can measure that. That's my next best alternative. That's the definition of opportunity cost. Where did I forego to do it? There's some other opportunities you could have done. 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe you could have, today's a fairly good day, I think, with the sun out. Maybe when the springtime and warmer weather comes, you go to the beach. 8 o'clock in the morning, I don't know. But that's an activity. You You could do that. Go to breakfast with your best friend. Many other activities. The example of the computer game is I put back up here. And I remember taking a $25 game downtown or on campus as opposed to the $15 game downtown. If watching the last hour of your favorite cable TV movie is the most valuable opportunity, that would be The Walking Dead TV show, that is. Did you know that is the #1 show on TV, or was? AMC? If you don't know what I'm talking about, it is. It's nuts. About zombies. I actually watch it. A friend of mine got me into it, and I go, golly, why do I watch this silly thing? It's got a decent plot, though, to it.
Comic book is better.
What's that?
It was originally a comic book, and it's the comic
It was a comic book, yes. And I didn't know all that.
Yeah.
But, yeah. All right. So if watching the last hour of your favorite cable TV movie is the most valuable opportunity that conflicts with the trip downtown, the opportunity cost, what you're giving up, if making the trip is the dollar value placed on pursuing that opportunity, on watching the last hour. That is the largest amount you'd be willing to pay to avoid missing the end of the movie or the show. Okay, so that's you have to place some sort of value on it. That's kind of hard there, but you wouldn't want to place more than $10 because that's the difference going downtown to save the money. But it's always the next best alternative. So you want to sit on your couch and watch the movie, you'll do that. And you think that is more valuable than saving $10. Opportunity cost of making the trip is not all the combinations of the activities you could have pursued. It's the one that you would have valued the most. So that's the difference. I mean, that's kind of the specific definition of opportunity cost. It's the one you would have chosen had you not made that trip. So in watching the movie, that might be the one I value the most. Everybody said, maybe you're going to go to the beach. That's another opportunity. You can't add them all up. Just take the one that's the most valuable to you. Now, I put this slide together a few years ago that kind of summarizes what we talked about up to this point. The first level is the fact that in economics or in society, we have limited resources, but we have unlimited wants. So we have to balance that out somehow. Usually price dictates that. But that leads to the fact that we have limited resources and unlimited wants. That leads to the concept of scarcity. Remember we talked about scarcity. Scarcity implies the existence of alternatives for resources. All goods and services are scarce. From scarcity, it led to making choices. That you had to choose among those different alternatives. And then from the choices that you make, those choices you made led to the opportunity cost of something you gave up, which they all kind of go together, from one level to the next, beginning with essentially the definition of economics, where you have limited resources and unlimited wants. The final few slides of this series is about some terms and definitions. I want to talk a little bit about models, some other phrases that are commonly used. Models are theories. A model is nothing more, or a theory is nothing more than a simplification of reality. That's all it is. It represents reality. However, it's trying to predict and explain what's going to occur. But you can always, most students will always refute some sort of theory. Well, this doesn't work in the real world. Yeah, I know that. But we're trying to present the common or general statement that may occur. We use a lot of generalizations. Like I can make one right now. This one actually applied to this bullet point right here. Other things equal, that's a common assumption called ceteris paribus. All things constant, or all things equal. If I'm going to assume, a big assumption here, make this statement. Assuming that everyone in here likes red meat. If the price of steak fell per pound, the demand, the desire to buy the steak would go up, assuming everybody liked red meat. But I know in reality, not everyone likes red meat, or will eat red meat. Okay? So, but we're trying to predict what would happen if we kind of let everything to be constant. If you like red meat, if the price falls, the demand will go up. That's actually the law of demand, which we'll talk about here in our next set of slides. In World War II, there were prison camps that used a commodity, cigarettes, as a form of money, and they were able to create a very simplified economy by buying and selling goods, or trading with cigarettes. That happened frequently. In some countries it's happened before too with commodities. Another way to illustrate a model or theory is through computerization now, simulating the economy via a model. Econometrics is one that's been popular over the past 20 years, trying to predict what may happen if this happened. So just various models and theories that come up. Again, economics is a social science, deals with people. Of course, people make different decisions all the time. The last thing is that we use a lot of graphs. What you do is you use a lot of graphs. If you've had macro, you probably remember the graphs, supply and demand. We're going to get into that here in the next set of slides. But there's some new graphs you haven't seen in micro. We get to those about 6-7 weeks into the course. The cost curves. Two other terms here is referring to the difference between positive and normative economics. Positive is a descriptive statement. So if I make a descriptive statement about economics, which is basically describing something, what is, if I make a normative statement, I'm usually going to give you an opinion, a value judgment. And it might include the phrase, what ought to be, or what should be. I'll make a silly, non-economic phrase. The sky is blue. Is that positive or normative? It's a positive statement. The sky ought to be green is a normative statement because it's an opinion. I could say we ought to lower taxes. That's dealing with macroeconomics. That's a normative statement. That's an opinion. This is where you get a lot of, right here, is where you get a lot of politicians, a lot of economists who disagree on how to correct the economy. And what should we do? Should we keep the Federal Reserve involved? Should we lower taxes? Should we spend more money on the government level? We spend enough money as it is. It's just all kinds of disagreements. Reason is because it's opinions. It's opinions of people. We're in the micro class, and I wanted to put this slide up just because of the difference between the two studies. This is what we're going to be talking about throughout the course. And I really didn't give any other examples other than just the fact that we're going to study decisions by individuals, households, and firms for market structures. And macroeconomics is the study of the behavior of the economy as a whole. And you might recall some of the things here I mentioned: inflation, taxes, unemployment, gross domestic product, big picture, the whole country. Whereas at micro, we're going to talk about monopolies, which are regulated in the United States, firms that make decisions and how it affects prices, oligopolies are another example. So that's more micro, and that's where you get some of the cost curves. All right, this slide is on some mistakes not to make. As a student of economics, you want to be aware of these things. Try to think like an economist. You're not going to be an economist, but you can think like one a little bit. some important decision pitfalls or mistakes. The first one is ignoring opportunity cost. That's a mistake, ignoring them. You don't want to ignore them. You want to consider those opportunity costs when making a decision. You want to consider, when you make a decision, what is my next best alternative? Is it worth making this other decision? You know, by comparing it to the next best alternative. You have to consider those opportunity costs. The second one here is not ignoring sunk cost. That's a mistake, not ignoring them. In this case, you should ignore them. Anybody know what sunk costs are? Sunk costs are those costs that can never be recovered. Those have had accounting. You cannot get them back. You've already paid for something, and so it's gone. I used to give an example, and I'll still give the example, with buying a concert ticket. You buy a concert ticket, maybe say $100. With today's computer and internet, you might be able to resell it fairly quickly. But in the past, if you bought the concert ticket and you decided, or actually something happened the day of the concert, you got sick and you couldn't go, what would you do with the ticket? If you got lucky, maybe sell it to a family member or a friend. But you basically, you eat the cost. I mean, it's gone. You've already paid for it months ago, and it's a sunk cost to you. So you might as well just forget about it. Using averages instead of marginal costs and benefits. You should not use averages. You should use the marginal differences. We'll get more into marginal costs and benefits later because that is a part of micro. But for now, just remember that averages are okay, but shouldn't be used exclusively. Fallacy of composition. What's the word fallacy mean? False belief. False belief. And this is the mistaken assumption that what is true of the part is also true of the whole. So if the price of a large cheese pizza in Manatee County is $10 average, so I'm going to use an average there. If the average price of a large cheese pizza is $10, does that mean the national average is $10? No. So don't fall into that false belief of that assumption. Just because it's $10 here doesn't mean it's going to be $10 nationwide. Probably not. Probably a little more. Same thing with gas prices. You could do that example. The last one is association is not causation. Sometimes correlation is used. Here's the same word as association. Remember the if-then statements? If you do something, then this will occur. Or if this happens, then this will happen. If you study, then you'll receive an A. Is that true? No, not necessarily. There's probably a high association with it or a high correlation with it, though. If you study, then you will receive a good grade. Maybe not an A, but studying probably is correlated to receiving better grades. But one doesn't necessarily cause the other. People study differently, and the way you study might not be right. You may be studying with the TV blaring and the iPod in your ear and all that, distortion. Of course, you guys can multitask better than older people. And I'm fairly unable. Men, I don't know if men can multitask as well. But I had to be focused. When I studied, I had to go to the library. Everybody know what that is? Yeah, that's the library. You go to the library and study. I did. I had to go. At UF, I finally figured it out. It's about the third year up there. It took me 3 years to figure that out. You can't study in the dorm or the apartment. There's just too many people, too much storage, too much going on. So I go to the library where there was a quiet area. And it was quiet. Now, I think the library still exists like that up there at UF. I'd go in the back, get a desk and a chair by myself, and just not be bothered. But I figured that out finally. Sometimes it helps to study with somebody else. I like that too. I learned that in grad school actually a little more, where we would study together. That helped. But up until that time, I was more of an independent. But in grad school, it's a little bit smaller, close-knit. Maybe you can study with another person and benefit from that. So I suggest those things when I'm teaching this class. Study with a partner. However, if you're going to study with a partner, study with someone who's done well. If you study with a partner who made a 50 on the first test, probably not a good idea. Sorry, but that's just, study with somebody who did well. Okay? All right, a few more slides. I'm going to go ahead and uncover all of them on this slide. These are the factors of production. Now, this is more of a macro topic, but I wanted to bring them up just because it is a basic concept in economics. And just to remember, for you to remember, how things are made. There are 4 factors of production, or resources, 4 basic groups. I've divided them into 2 categories, okay, on the left, on the right. One on the left is the material resources. The one on the right is the human resources. In the red bullet points, those are the 4 factors of production. It's the land, physical capital, labor, and entrepreneurship. Those are the 4 factors of production. You'll notice the 2 on the left are material resources. They deal with materials and natural resources, raw materials, that kind of thing. The land, that's exactly what it means. Minerals, the forest, the timber, water, all that kind of stuff. The physical capital. The physical capital, when I say the word capital, what do you mean? What do you think of? First, money. Capital. And most often people, that's what people do think of. But in economics, we don't think too much about financial capital. There's actually 2 capitals. There's another capital we spell with an O-L. But with capital with an A, when you say financial capital, it's money. But physical capital is not money. Of course, you need money to get the physical capital, so they are related. Physical capital is the machines, the equipment, the buildings, the tools, all the things necessary to make the goods and services. So if we were building this table, okay, this table, and that was our invention, just our idea, okay? We would need land so that we can buy a facility, buy a place, then build a plant, a manufacturing plant. The manufacturing plant is the physical capital. The tools inside the plant would be physical capital. So you got the 2 material resources right there on the left. Then you're going to need, on the right side, you're going to need people inside the factory to kind of run the machines, make sure all the finished wood and the lathes and the cutting is all done on assembly line type work. So you need labor resources, and that's what labor is. That's the efforts of people, physical and mental. Then finally, you need a person, which was at the very beginning, the entrepreneur, who started the business, who had the idea of building tables. Not a very ingenious idea, but you get the idea. I mean, it is just something very basic, but all 4 factors of production were used. I want to open up a company to make tables for schools, for churches, whatever that might be used for. But you need financial capital to buy physical capital. So I want to make that relationship between the 2, because they're going to need it here on the next slide. Each of the 4 that I just had up there are listed right here. Land, capital, labor, and entrepreneurs. But instead of physical capital, I'm using financial capital. Landowners, these are called the returns to the owners. What do you get in return for the use of that resource? The landowners get a payment called rent. It's capitalized there. Again, you'll see this in macro more so. We actually talked about this in my macro class. Look at the website, on the Bureau of Economic Analysis website. But the rent is what they receive. So if you had land, and I'm going to let you use my land, you're going to pay me rent. Now, it may not be rent, it could be a mortgage. I mean, you may purchase the land. Same, it doesn't matter, but economists call the phrase rent. Capital owners, financial owners, those like banks that loan you money, in return for the use of the money, get what? Interest. Okay? Then labor owners, in return for your labor efforts, what do you get as a payment? You get a wage. Now, I know you may get a salary or a commission, but in economics, we just call it a whole one big thing, wages. An entrepreneur, in return for his risk of opening a business, opening this company to make these tables, he or she hopes to make a profit. Potential payment is profit. So all four of those in capitalized letters and underlined there, rent, interest, wages, and profit, are referred to as the national income in the United States. So from the four factors of production, the returns to those owners equals the national income. That's actually tracked statistically in the United States. And it's more of a macro thing, though. We talk about that in macro. Finally, the last slide is on the goals of a society. Goals of an economic system. I'm going to uncover them. Talk about each of them here. Whether you're the United States or Great Britain or Germany or Canada, you know, a country that's marketplace driven. These are some goals that you strive to attain. And again, this is more of a big picture thing, but we should always try to strive to be efficient. How many of you work somewhere where you see a lot of inefficiencies? That means waste. Put my hand up. I think all of you would put your hand up. If you work, you probably see waste. You're very inefficient. Waste of maybe not raw materials, but that's probably the case, but personnel too, people. You probably wonder, I wonder it here sometimes. You know, get on a soapbox, people's positions here at the college, I'll go, what do you do? I whisper to myself, what do you do? What's your job? I don't know, but there must be a reason for it. I don't think it's that efficient use of resources, but you see that everywhere, not just here. It's at a private institute, private corporation, public institution like this. You want to try to strive to minimize that, reduce it. I know grocery stores have a lot of food that they throw out, correct? I don't know, they get to donate some of it to the charity and homeless. If I work at Publix, got Publix employee, yeah, I got a few, I always have a few. They throw out a lot of food, but they probably get to donate it, right? No? Yes?
Bakery donates it like every week but Friday.
Okay. Every day but Friday.
Every week.
Bakery, okay, so they get bread.
They donate a lot of stuff as long as like the integrity of the product. Like you're allowed to donate it like the day it goes out of date, but after that you can't.
Right, okay. Well, so they're trying to be efficient with their resources. Obviously, they're donating it, not making any money on it. But, you know, that's better than just throwing it out, I guess. Equity. Now, what's the word equity mean? Equity does not mean equal. It doesn't mean equal, it means fair. How fair is our system? And you relate this to distribution of income and taxes. There's another phrase. Taxes. You may say our tax system is unfair. I'll say that. But what's fair? To tax everybody at the same percentage, no matter what they make? That wouldn't be fair, I don't think. We have a progressive system as it is today, where the more you make, you're taxed at a higher rate. Maybe those rates aren't high enough, but that provides an incentive, those that make a lot of money,
To hide the money.
to do what?
I'm sorry, to hide the money.
Well, maybe, but the reason, now the rich are taxed at a higher rate. I'm talking about a lot. They gotta have a lot of money. Millions, billions of dollars. Yes, they're trying to use ways to not be taxed and escape taxation. But they're also taking and using some of their money and investing it into other companies. They're purchasing stock and other investment assets in other companies. And if they were taxed at a higher rate, they wouldn't have that additional money to do that. They would be giving it to the government and finding even more ways, loopholes to try to save taxes. But there is a reason why. That's the reason, really, is so that the rich can continue to reinvest into other companies. You ever watch Shark Tank at night? Those guys on there, they're billionaires. And what do? What's the purpose? Is that people come on and they want to show them their new invention, whatever they want, their ideas that are. And the 5 that are sitting there are looking to invest in the company, in the idea, whether it's a good investment or not. It gets pretty interesting, cutthroat, but that's the reason it's called Shark Tank. And some of the ideas are really neat. Some of them you see in stores today. One of the ladies, I think, works at QVC. I think one of the ladies who's on the panel, she's a QVC person. So, if you're a QVC connoisseur, you know that they kind of show all these little things off in retail. There's a direct a communication way for their product to be seen. So if you can get on QVC, you're doing pretty good, from what I understand. But that's the whole idea of fairness in taxation and being fair. Equity means fair. The third one is stability. Stability means pricing. We want to try to keep prices, this is a goal now, stable. I know that's hard to do, and that's more of a macro thing, it's inflation. But when inflation starts to get out of hand, the Federal Reserve can do some things to kind of keep inflation in check. We want to maintain stability there. There are certain areas of our economy where prices are rising and have been rising for many years. Grocery prices, food prices, I think, have been rising. Gas, energy prices. Although I've read reports that, if you look at some of the government standards for cars as we approach 2015 and beyond that have been put in place, that cars and trucks are going to have certain miles per gallon standards. Well, that's going to save millions and billions of barrels of crude oil and gasoline every year. So the demand for gas is going to fall. It already has. Since 2008, I believe, which was kind of like the height, 2008 or 2007, the height of demand for gasoline and crude oil barrels per year. It has fallen steadily since then. And the reason is we got hybrid cars, we've got all these different electric cars now, and the efficiency of other cars has gotten better. And the government has mandated that car manufacturers are going to have to do better. Even trucks are going to have to get a little bit better so that we will save. It might only be a couple miles per gallon, but think about that, millions of people, just multiply that across the country. The demand for gas will actually fall a little bit. If the demand is lower than the supply, what happens to price? The price will fall. I read a report back in the fall where the price of gas around Christmas time, I don't think it ever hit here, that low was gonna go to about $2.97 a gallon. I think it got to about $3.15 here, somewhere around there. But it's gone back up though, a little bit. And during the spring, I will guarantee you, during the spring, it always rises around March, April, because people are traveling, spring break, and it rises, just a spike in the gas prices. Then it'll come back down by May. It's happened every year. It has to do with demand. And I also think March is the month in which refinery companies retool, where they kind of shut it down and kind of clean up things, maybe grease all their fittings and do all that kind of stuff. It just gets, and it's kind of weird, why would they do it in March? That's when there's a big demand for gas. All right, growth is the last one. Countries want to grow steadily. 2 to 3% a year would be wonderful. Anything more would be icing on the cake. So that's the last slide of the series. I want to go ahead, you got 10 minutes or so, let me at least start the next series, maybe a slide or two. Now this set of slides is different than the others, just a little bit. If you printed them off, you probably saw that there are some blanks. I put the blank, there's 20 slides by the way. I put the blanks in for the purpose, and actually if you've ever seen this done in seminars and workshops, this is to force people to pay attention. Oh, there were some sound effects too. Yes?
Can you raise that down?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I put some sound effects on this one, I don't know why, but I'm not real proficient with PowerPoint. I was playing around with it one day and I just put it on there. But there's blanks on this, and so you kind of are forced to pay attention and fill in the blanks. I'll tell you what the blanks are, what the words are going in there, so you can write them in. And hopefully, by you writing them down and paying attention, you might remember something. I don't know. I don't do it to all my slides. I do it to a few, but you know, it's a little bit harder to try to put them in there. However, the first slide here I want to talk about is actually what is the definition of a market? You might be able to tell me what the words are. We have to define what a market is in order to talk about the demand and the supply laws. A market is this. It's when buyers and sellers are brought together to complete a transaction. So the two words that go in there, buyers and sellers brought together to complete a transaction. That's it. Doesn't matter where the transaction occurs. It can occur online, electronic, internet sales. It could occur out here in the parking lot. Keep it clean, or at least legal. All right, you get the idea that maybe you're going to sell your textbook at the end of the semester. And somebody's offering you $20. You're the seller, they're the buyer, $20, done. There's a transaction, it occurred. You created a used textbook market right out there. Happens all the time, okay? By the way, textbooks, people were asking me the other day about textbooks. I have mine's a little bit different color because it's the instructor edition. Student edition, I believe, is a little more purple all the way down. I don't know why, but this is instructor. But this is the book. Can you take the class and be successful without a book? I'm going to say yes, you can, but if you ever need a resource, you at least have something to refer back to. The card that's inside that has the course mate quizzes and flashcards and things, tests, like sample questions, they can be very helpful. And it's free. I mean, we know how free it is, right? You're paying for it somewhere along the line, but you don't have to go pay extra. Once you buy the book, it's in there. A new one. Now, if you bought a used book on Amazon, it probably doesn't have the card anywhere in sight. But I've always said, get it wherever you can, the cheapest. It's $59.95 at the bookstore. And if you can buy it for $30 on Amazon, buy it for $30. But don't go buy anything else, like an online resource center or a resource code. Don't do that. You don't have to, it's not required. But, so the textbook, I think, is a very important resource for you to be, for it to be helpful. You may not understand something. However, you know what another resource is? I've learned this over the years. Well, the internet. Google it. If you don't know an answer, Google it. You'll find an answer. You'll find, I don't know if it'll be the right answer, but you'd hope it's going to be the correct answer. The law of demand is the law of demand. I mean, I would hope that somebody would put on an incorrect, well, don't always believe the internet, I will tell you that too. It's not always accurate. If you're looking up medical things, there's two sites I would be confident about. What are they? Anybody know? What? You may know one. WebMD. That's a pretty reliable site for health questions. The second one I always look for is the Mayo Clinic. I think it's fairly reliable too. The Mayo Clinic's very well known. And so if you have health problems, I look at those two things. You're going to find other sites, and man, you don't know if somebody's written them in or written up stuff. But those two are fairly reputable. All right, so a market is created very simply by buyers and sellers being brought together to complete a transaction. The kind of market that we're going to talk about is a perfectly competitive market. Now, that's a special kind of market. I mean, that's a market where there are many buyers and sellers. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of buyers and sellers. So there's perfect competition between those groups. Here are some other characteristics. I'll just uncover it and I'll give you the three words that go in here. The goods being offered for sale are similar. For it to be perfectly competitive, this is what has to be there. They have to be similar products. Can't be different. Goods being offered for sale are similar. Or the same. I don't care what word. The second attribute is buyers and sellers are so numerous that no single buyer or seller can what? Influence market price. You have so many opportunities as a buyer, and sellers have so many buyers, they can't raise their price, because if they do, they're not going to sell it, and because you as the buyer have other opportunities to go buy it somewhere else for the same price, for that market price. So no one can influence the price. That's why there's just so many of them. Now, if you only have one buyer, two sellers, or one seller, monopoly, monopoly's going to influence it, isn't it? Or 8 sellers, which is more like an oligopoly, then they're going to influence the price. So that's not perfect competition. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was about the monopoly.
Yeah. If you got one seller, you can influence it. But since we're assuming there are many buyers and sellers, thousands of them, I can't influence it. I mean, I can't. If I'm a farmer who is trying to sell oranges to Tropicana, I got an orange grove and I sell. There are other citrus growers in the state. Orange citrus is a prominent industry in Florida. So I can't say to Tropicana, well, I want $5 a pound, and the going rate's $3. Tropicana's going to say, forget you, bye-bye, we're going to get ours from other citrus growers, because the going rate is $3. Just because you've got, don't think your oranges are any better. Okay, number 3, buyers and sellers have perfect information. Perfect information. There's a topic later on in the course that we talk more about the economics of information. But for now, both groups, buyers and sellers, will have the same And you know, with the internet, computers, you have the access to the same stuff. Even in buying a used car, you have more information you can acquire. Get the Carfax. 30 years ago, you didn't have that. You had to take the word of the seller in a used car. And you had maybe a 90-day warranty or something. But beyond that, it was like the warranty was, you didn't see the tail lights anymore. That was it. It drove away. And so, but today you have perfect information. You can find out all kinds of things about the car. You want to pay an extra fee for it. Sometimes they're free reports. But buyers have that information, sellers have it. Used real estate or homes being resold. There's disclosures that must be provided by the seller to, again, protect the buyer. All right, so I'll stop there. And on Wednesday, we will continue with this set of slides.